The transport shuttle's engines hummed to silence as Dr. Eli Mercer gazed through the porthole. At Erinyll's verdant landscape, 3 moons hung in the amber sky above forests that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. After months of preparation, he was finally here to study the planet's remarkable bioluminescent flora. Dr. Mercer, a soft voice spoke behind him, barely above a whisper. Eli turned to see his assigned liaison waiting in the shuttle's doorway. She was tall and willowy, with pale purple skin that seemed to shimmer subtly in the filtered light, dark curls framed, a delicate face with large, expressive eyes that immediately darted away from his gaze. "You must be Kira," he said, offering what he hoped was a reassuring smile. "Thank you for agreeing to work with me." She nodded quickly, clutching a data pad against her chest like a shield. The research station is prepared. I have compiled preliminary data on the specimens you requested. Her voice carried a melodic quality despite its hesitant delivery. As they walked through the station's corridors, Eli noticed how Kira kept several paces behind him, her footsteps nearly silent on the metal flooring. When he slowed to match her pace, she would hang back further, as if maintaining some invisible boundary between them. "The local government briefed me that you're an expert on Erinyll's plant life," Eli said, attempting conversation. "I'm looking forward to learning from your knowledge." Kira's cheeks deepened to a dusky violet. Yes, the flora here is unique." She paused at a laboratory door, fumbling with the access panel. "Your equipment has been calibrated to our atmospheric readings." The lab was impressive state-of-the-art analysis equipment, arranged around specimen containers that glowed with soft, otherworldly light. Bioluminescent samples lined the walls in neat rows, casting dancing shadows across the room. "This is incredible," Eli breathed, moving toward a particularly vibrant blue-green specimen. "The luminescence patterns are unlike anything in our databases." He reached for his scanner, but paused when he noticed Kira watching him intently. The moment their eyes met, she quickly looked away, busying herself with adjusting equipment that clearly needed no adjustment. Over the following hours, Eli began to establish a routine. He would examine specimens and take readings while Kira provided context in her quiet, careful way. She knew every plant's properties, growth patterns, and seasonal behaviors, but delivered information as if she were afraid of saying too much. "The Volani flowers only bloom during the conjunction of the 2nd and 3rd moons," she explained, indicating a cluster of dormant buds. "Their luminescence is said to inspire deep emotions in those who witness it." Inspire emotions. Eli looked up from his notes, intrigued. Kira's color deepened again. "It is cultural belief, perhaps not scientifically relevant." "Cultural context is absolutely relevant," Eli assured her. "Your people's relationship with these plants could provide crucial insights for the briefest moment." Something flickered in Kira's expression: surprise, perhaps even hope. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by her usual guarded demeanor. As the day's work concluded, Eli found himself studying his enigmatic companion. There was something about her careful movements, the way she seemed to absorb every detail of his work, that suggested depths beneath her shy exterior. Yet every attempt at personal conversation met with polite deflection. "Thank you for today," he said as they prepared to leave. "I hope this assignment isn't too burdensome for you." Kira paused at the doorway, her hand resting on the frame. For a moment, he thought she might say something more, but she simply nodded and disappeared into the corridor, leaving Eli alone with the gentle glow of alien flowers and the growing sense that there was far more to his quiet liaison than met the eye. 3 weeks had passed since Ellie's arrival, and the rhythm of their work had settled into something almost comfortable. Almost. Kira still maintained her careful distance, but Eli had begun to notice the small things: how her eyes would linger on his face when she thought he wasn't looking, how she would lean slightly closer when explaining a particularly complex botanical process, the way her voice carried a hint of warmth when discussing the plants she clearly loved. "The Thymerus root system extends nearly 50 meters underground," Kira explained, kneeling beside a towering tree whose bark pulsed with gentle amber light. "It connects to others of its species, creating a network of shared resources and communication." Eli crouched beside her, noting how the proximity made her breathing quicken slightly. Communication? You mean chemical signals, more than that. Kira's hand hovered over the exposed roots, and for a moment her reserve seemed to drop. My grandmother used to say the trees share dreams. She claimed she could feel their contentment during the growing season, their restlessness before storms. Do you believe that? Eli asked softly, genuinely curious about this glimpse into her inner thoughts. Kira's gaze met his for several heartbeats before she looked away. Perhaps. There's much about our world that your instruments cannot measure. As they worked, their hands occasionally brushed while collecting samples. Each time, Eli felt a small jolt of electricity, and he couldn't help but notice how Kira would freeze for just an instant, before quickly pulling away. Yet she never moved to create more space between them. During their lunch break, they sat in the dappled shade of the research station's garden. Eli had grown accustomed to the comfortable silence, but today something felt different. Kira seemed to be wrestling with unspoken thoughts. May I ask about human customs? She said suddenly, her voice so quiet he almost missed it. Of course, when humans feel attraction, how do they express it? The question came out in a rush, followed by such a deep blush that her purple skin took on shades of deep violet. Ellie's heart skipped. Well, it varies. Sometimes we start with small gestures, spending time together, sharing interests, physical touch like holding hands. He paused, studying her carefully. Why do you ask? Curiosity, she said quickly, but the way she fidgeted with her data pad suggested otherwise. Human customs are so different from ours. How so? Kira was quiet for so long that Eli thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Among my people, when a female feels drawn to someone, she cannot be passive. Our traditions require her to take action, to prove her worth through demonstration of strength and commitment. That sounds beautiful, Eli said carefully. A culture where women take the initiative. Beautiful for those with confidence, Kira whispered. More difficult for those who are not bold by nature. The vulnerability in her voice made Ellie's chest tighten. He wanted to reach out, to reassure her, but sensed that any sudden movement might cause her to retreat completely. Sometimes the bravest acts come from those who are naturally gentle. He said instead, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. Kira looked up at him then, really looked, and Eli saw something shift in her expression. A decision being made, perhaps, a wall beginning to crack. That evening, as they finished cataloging the day's specimens, Kira approached him with obvious nervousness. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down her equipment. Eli, she said, using his first name for the first time, could you meet me tomorrow evening, after our work is finished? Of course. Is there a particular specimen you wanted to show me? Kira shook her head, her color deepening. Not a specimen, a cultural demonstration. Something important to my people, something I would like to share with you. The formal way she spoke couldn't hide the emotion beneath her words. Eli felt his pulse quicken as he realized this might be more than a simple cultural exchange. Where would you like to meet? The Velani Grove. When the second moon reaches its peak, she paused, gathering courage. There is something I must show you, something I need you to understand about how my people express what cannot be spoken. Before Eli could respond, Kira gathered her things and hurried toward the exit, leaving him alone with the soft glow of alien plants and the growing certainty that tomorrow night would change everything between them. The Velani Grove at night was a scene from a dream. Bioluminescent flowers had opened with the rising of the second moon, bathing the clearing in ethereal blue-white light. Ancient trees formed a natural circle, their luminescent bark pulsing in slow, hypnotic rhythms that seemed to match the beating of Ellie's heart. He found Kira waiting in the center of the grove, but she was transformed. Gone was the hesitant scientist in practical work clothes. She wore a flowing garment of deep indigo that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light, and her dark curls were adorned with small, glowing flowers. Yet despite her ethereal appearance, her nervousness was palpable. You came, she said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of relief and terror. Of course I came. Eli moved closer, noting how she stood straighter despite her obvious anxiety. Kira, you look incredible. She closed her eyes briefly, as if drawing strength from some inner source. When she opened them again, there was a new determination in her gaze, though her hands still trembled. "What I am about to do," she began, her voice stronger now, "is called the velter in our language. It is how a female of my people declares her intent when she has chosen someone who stirs her heart." Ellie's breath caught. "Chosen someone, you," she whispered, then immediately seemed to regret the admission. "I know it may seem impossible. I know I am not bold or confident like your human females might be. But our traditions demand that I speak, that I act, that I prove my worthiness rather than wait passively." She reached into a small pouch at her waist and withdrew what appeared to be paint in small containers, blues and silvers that glowed softly in the moonlight. "The velter requires me to mark you with the symbols of my heart's choosing," she continued, her voice gaining strength even as her cheeks burned with deep purple blush. "To speak words that have been spoken for generations, to show you that, despite my quiet nature, my feelings are not quiet at all." Eli stood transfixed as Kira approached him, the containers trembling in her hands. "If you do not wish this," she said quickly, "if my feelings are unwelcome, please tell me now. I will understand. I will not make our work uncomfortable, Kira." His voice was gentle but firm. "I've been hoping for weeks that your reserve meant something more than disinterest. I just never imagined that someone like me could feel so strongly," she finished, a hint of pain in her voice. "That someone as incredible as you could feel anything for someone like me." He corrected softly. The admission seemed to give her the courage she needed. With careful, reverent movements, she began to paint symbols on his hands, intricate designs that seemed to glow against his skin. "These marks represent strength," she said, her touch sending electricity through him. "Not physical strength, but the strength of spirit that drew me to you. Your gentleness with our fragile plants, your patience with my shyness, your respect for our world." She moved to his arms, painting flowing patterns that seemed to dance in the grove's ethereal light. Her touch became surer, more confident, as if the ritual itself was lending her courage. "These represent devotion," she continued, moving closer. "My promise that what I feel is not fleeting attraction, but something deeper, something that has grown each day I have watched you work, watched you treat our world with such care." Finally, she reached up to paint symbols on his forehead and cheeks, her face now inches from his. Despite her trembling, her movements were precise, ceremonial. "And these," she whispered, "represent desire, the longing I have hidden, the dreams I have not dared to speak, the wish to be more than your guide, more than your colleague." As she finished the final symbol, Kira stepped back, her chest rising and falling rapidly. The shy scientist was gone, replaced by a woman transformed by the power of her own declaration. "Now," she said, her voice carrying new authority, "I must prove that these words are not empty. The velter demands demonstration." What followed was unlike anything Eli could have imagined. Kira began to move with graceful purpose, her earlier hesitation replaced by the fluid confidence of someone following ancient patterns, bred into her very bones. "In my culture," she said, circling him slowly, "the female must show that she can be both tender and fierce, both gentle and determined, that she can lead when tradition demands it." She reached for the fastenings of his shirt, her touch sure despite the way her breath quickened. "The velter is not a request, Eli. It is a claiming, a statement that you belong to me as much as I belong to you." The painted symbols on his skin seemed to pulse with warmth as she traced them with her fingertips, each touch sending waves of sensation through him. Her eyes never left his face, watching for any sign of hesitation or rejection. "Your culture teaches passivity in females," she whispered, her hands exploring the contours of his chest. "Mine teaches us to take what we desire, to show our strength, through action rather than words." Despite her bold words, Eli could see the vulnerability beneath her newfound confidence. The way she still sought reassurance in his expressions, the slight tremor in her voice when she spoke of desire. It made her courage all the more remarkable. "You're incredible," he breathed, reaching up to cup her face. "The bravest person I've ever known." The words seemed to break something inside her. Suddenly she was kissing him with desperate intensity, pouring weeks of suppressed longing into the connection. Her hands tangled in his hair as she pressed against him, and Eli realized that this shy, careful woman had been holding back an ocean of passion. "I have watched you," she murmured against his lips, her voice husky with emotion. "Dreamed of you. Imagined what it would feel like to touch you without pretense, without the barriers I built around my heart." They sank together onto the soft, luminescent moss that carpeted the grove floor. Above them, the Villani flowers pulsed with increasing intensity, as if responding to the emotions being played out beneath their glow. Kira's movements were a beautiful contradiction, confident and uncertain, bold and tender. She led the dance as her traditions demanded, yet sought his guidance with every touch, every kiss. The ceremonial garment she wore seemed designed to be easily removed, and as it fell away, Eli marveled at the way the grove's ethereal light played across her pale purple skin. "The ritual speaks of becoming one spirit," she whispered, her hands exploring him with growing boldness, "of joining not just bodies, but souls." Their lovemaking was slow, reverent, infused with the weight of cultural significance and deep emotion. Every touch carried meaning. Every kiss was both question and answer. Kira's confidence grew with each response she drew from him, each sign that her bold declaration was welcomed, cherished. When passion finally overcame them both, it was with an intensity that made the very air around them seem to shimmer. The bioluminescent flowers pulsed in rhythm with their breathing, as if the grove itself was blessing their union. Afterward, they lay entwined beneath the alien stars, Kira's head resting on Ellie's chest as she traced the glowing symbols she had painted on his skin. "I was so afraid," she admitted quietly, her earlier boldness replaced by wonder. "Afraid you would see only a timid alien female who could never be enough for a sophisticated human. And I was afraid you barely tolerated my presence," Eli replied, running his fingers through her dark curls, "that you were counting the days until my research was complete." She lifted her head to look at him, and in her eyes he saw not the shy liaison who had greeted him weeks ago, but a woman transformed by her own courage. "The ritual is not complete," she said softly. "There is one final element, a choice you must make." "What choice?" "Whether to accept the bond the velter creates, whether to become, in the eyes of my people, my chosen mate." Her voice was steady, but he could feel the rapid beating of her heart against his chest. "It would mean commitment, not just for the remainder of your research, but beyond." Dawn came slowly to Erinyll, the 3 moons setting one by one as the amber sun climbed the horizon. Eli woke to find Kira watching him with quiet intensity, her fingers still tracing the painted symbols that hadn't faded in the night's gentle breeze. "Good morning," he said softly, reaching up to brush a curl from her face. "Good morning, my chosen one," she replied, and though the words carried formal weight, her smile was purely personal, intimate. They had talked through much of the night after her question about the bond. Ellie's answer had been swift and certain yes. He wanted whatever connection she was offering, but understanding what that meant in practical terms required explanation of customs, traditions, and implications neither had fully considered. "My family will want to meet you," Kira said as they slowly made their way back toward the research station, fingers intertwined. "The bonding ceremony requires the blessing of both our houses." "And my research contract?" Eli asked, though his priorities had shifted dramatically overnight. "Extended indefinitely, if you wish it." There was a new confidence in her voice that hadn't been there before, as if claiming him had unlocked some essential part of herself. "My people value what you're learning about our world. They would welcome a permanent exchange program." The transformation in their dynamic was remarkable. Where before Kira had hung back, uncertain, now she walked beside him as an equal partner. The ritual had given her permission to be herself fully, not just the shy scientist, but the passionate woman beneath. "There's something I need to tell you," she said as they paused outside the station. "Last night, it wasn't just about following tradition." "What do you mean?" "I chose to pursue the velter because my feelings for you had become overwhelming. But the ritual itself, the way it demanded I be bold, be the initiator." She looked down at their joined hands. "It showed me parts of myself I had forgotten. My grandmother always said I had the heart of a leader, But I had convinced myself that shyness was weakness. And now I understand that gentleness and strength are not opposites. She lifted her gaze to his, and he saw the synthesis of both aspects of her nature, the careful scientist and the bold woman who had claimed him in an ancient grove. I can be both tender and fierce. Just as the ritual taught, inside the station, their colleagues greeted them with knowing smiles. Apparently, the significance of a human participating in the velter had not gone unnoticed by the research community. Dr. Mercer, said Dr. Thane, the station director, approaching with barely contained amusement, I trust your cultural education was illuminating. Eli felt heat rise in his cheeks, but Kira stepped forward with new authority. Dr. Mercer has accepted the bond right, she announced formally. We request official recognition and the appropriate adjustments to his research assignment. Granted, with our congratulations, Dr. Thane replied, offering what Eli recognized as a formal bow of respect. Perhaps you could document this unique interspecies bonding for our cultural archives. As they settled into their lab that morning, everything felt different yet familiar. They still worked with the same careful attention to detail, still cataloged specimens and analyzed data, but now there were casual touches, shared smiles, and an intimacy that had been impossible before. The Thymerus Grove we studied yesterday, Kira said, leaning over his shoulder to point at a data readout. I want to show you something there tonight. Not for research this time. Another ritual? Eli asked, enjoying the way she blushed at the suggestion. No, she laughed, the sound free and musical in a way he'd never heard before. Just a place that's special to me. A place I want to share with the person who helped me discover I could be brave. That evening, as they walked hand in hand toward the luminescent forest, Eli reflected on how completely his mission had changed. He'd come to Rinyal to study alien plant life and found something far more precious, a love that had transformed them both. Do you regret it? Kira asked suddenly, as if reading his thoughts. Accepting a bond that ties you to this world, too. Me. Eli stopped walking and turned to face her fully in the gathering twilight. With the alien flora beginning its nightly display of bioluminescent beauty, she looked like something from a dream. His partner, his chosen mate, the shy woman who had found courage enough to claim him. The only thing I regret, he said, pulling her close, is that it took 3 weeks for you to perform that ritual. Her laughter echoed through the forest as they continued deeper into their new life together, where gentle botanist and bold alien lover had found in each other exactly what they never knew they were searching for.